Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is the Practical Training Podcast, brought to you by Practical Training Professionals out here in beautiful Southern Maryland. We hope today you're doing your best to train and survive and do the best you can, learn, defend, and prevail. Today we have on a very special guest from out in Arizona, kind of my old stopping grounds, and we'll get to that in a bit. But this is Josh Logan of Guardian Training and Consulting. So everybody, please welcome Josh to the stream here. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Beep, bop. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. So apparently Josh is a doppelganger. So there's another version of Josh that's running around, and I just learned that before the episode starts. So this is the one and only Josh Logan of Guardian Training and Consulting. How you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a long day. I am on the East Coast. Josh is out in Arizona, and you know, I grew up out in Arizona. I grew up in southeastern Arizona in Graham County for the majority of my life. And I always, even though I lived there for so long, and now I live in a state with a daylight savings time, I still can't figure out if I'm 2 hours ahead of Arizona or 3 hours ahead of Arizona. So Josh was texting me almost exactly an hour ago saying, hey, we still good for 5 o'clock? And I thought I boned up, right? I was like, shit, did I get the timeline wrong? Nope, here we are. All right, so it's been a relatively long day. It's nice, hot, and muggy out here in beautiful Southern Maryland. What's it like out there in Arizona, bud?
It's hot. It's actually muggy out here. We have monsoon season, so it's like 91, but it's a horrific 50% humidity.
Yeah, it's god awful.
So I know 50% humidity is not bad for you, but for, like you said it the best in your intro, the desert rat doesn't like above like 20% humidity.
That's right, man. And it's true. You know, I live down in the valley of, when I lived in Arizona, I lived in the Gila River Valley. So there's mountains on kind of both sides of us. There's Mount Graham, with the observatory kind of dominating the Gila Valley. And then there's some other mountains around us. So we were insulated from some of the big storms. They broke on the mountains before they got to us. But, you know, I spent some time in Yuma, definitely up in the Sun Valley, and then down in the high desert when I was at Huachuca. And Arizona's crazy, you know, and I always try to preface that when I talk to people. They're like, oh, you're from Arizona, and they just automatically assume I'm from the desert. And but which is a good assumption, but you know, they neglect like the Sedona and the Mogollon Rim and Flagstaff and like kind of the high country part, you know. So I always
we actually get snow.
Yeah, right. Where is Guardian Training and Consulting at?
So we're Phoenix based.
Okay.
So right outside of Phoenix, but we're a mobile training group, so we don't have a training center. We actually come to you.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. So you guys are based out of Phoenix. It's a pretty big metropolitan area. And kind of the first question I wanted to roll into right here, Josh, is this, man. So, you know, I grew up out in Arizona, in the southeastern portion. So it was very, you know, conservative, and this isn't a political podcast. I'm not going there. But everybody was kind of gun-toting, right? Like everybody owned a gun. Everybody, you know, shot rifles, and it was super simple because there's just a vast amount of desert all around you. You could go out and train basically whenever you wanted to, without necessarily having to go to a range. And then moved out here, and it's like, you know, you just can't do it. It's just a completely different animal out here. But one of the things I remember specifically about living in Arizona, and I didn't move away from Arizona until I was in my 30s. So quite a while. And I carried pretty often, depending on the situation I was in. I wasn't a daily kind of everyday carry guy, but anytime I went up to the valley, right, I carried just because I didn't know what to expect. But it was constitutional carry in the state of Arizona. And so let me ask you, I'm gonna ask you because you're the professional. I didn't even give your credentials here. So before we get into the questions, tell us a little bit about Josh Logan.
Sure. So I was raised on a 60-acre horse farm in Athens, Ohio. So it's 60 acres. We had 8 horses at any given time. So I grew up in the woods. So similar to like the type of country that, you know, Maryland is, you know, that temperate forest, you know, 4 seasons instead of 2.
Yeah.
So we lived there for most of my life. And then we got away from Ohio because of the white stuff that falls from the sky, commonly referred to as snow. Mm-hmm. So we moved to Arizona and went to high school here, went to ASU for a couple years. I wanted to be an Air Force pilot my entire life. So I wanted to fly F-15s, the biggest, baddest fighter aircraft at the time of my life. So went to ASU, and I realized I suck at math. like hardcore suck at math. Like, don't ask me to do public math on here because I will end this podcast quick. So that's what I thought I wanted to do, you know, and not to get too religious, but, you know, you have how you make God laugh is you tell him all your plans.
That's true.
And so went to issue for a couple years, wasn't in the cards. So I joined the United States Air Force because I scored high enough on my ASVAB to choose. So a lot of people like to say, you went Air Force. Come on, man. Hey, I chose the Air Force. And went to Air Force, wanted to see the world on their dime. Mm-hmm. And got sent to exotic Minot, North Dakota.
How beautiful. Yeah. More white stuff falling from the sky.
More white stuff than I could ever dream of. So my job up there, I worked for the 94th Security Forces Group, which is a Minot Air Force Base. So Minot is one of those weird bases that, not weird, but unique bases that we have 2 nuke missions. So we have the B-52s that drop the air cruise launch, the air launched cruise missiles. And then we have the silos, and that's what was my job.
Okay.
So the intercontinental ballistic missiles, Minuteman III. So for about 4 years, my job was to take them from the launch facility, which is the silos, which are 70 to 100 miles away from base, and then convoy them back to the base. Mm-hmm. So these launch facilities, silos, are in the middle of sunflower cornfields. So you'll just be driving down the road, and you're like, that looks weird. That's a missile silo.
Okay.
So when they had to work on the nuke, which every Minuteman III has 3 warheads in it, they would upload it onto a semi-truck and then drive it back to base 70 to 100 miles on city streets. So any given point around Minot, around Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, or FE Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, you could see an Air Force semi-truck, and it's got a nuclear weapon in it. So my job was the airborne asset that went ahead of the convoy and did route sweeps from something as innocuous as a traffic accident to, okay, we have a threat in this exact area. We need to reroute the convoy to go elsewhere.
Sure.
So my job was to direct the convoy and work with convoy command, ground command, to take them from point A to point B safely with a nuclear weapon. So my job for about 4 years, was to shoot big guns, blow stuff up, kick doors, fly in helicopters, work out, eat, sleep, and repeat. It was fun. But I did get bored with it. You know, I realized I don't fit into government service that well because I'm disruptive. Mm-hmm. I'm always the guy that raises my hand and asks why. And it doesn't fit into government service that well.
Not all government service, you're right. Nope, it doesn't.
And so how did how the smart part I did, I got out of that government service and went into more government service. So I joined the Minot Police Department, which is about 13 miles south of the base. Mm-hmm. And I did that for about 2.5 years. So I was at Minot for about 7 years or so. And in that time, I watched a city of, at the time it was 55,000 people and 60 officers sworn. But in that time, I watched it from go Mayberry to murder capital North Dakota.
Really?
So we had 8 homicides the last year I worked. It was pretty horrific. And a lot of it was due to the oil that was found under the lakes of Kakawea. And so it brought in oil companies. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain demographic of people that work in the oil fields that are called roughneckers. And it's no disrespect to the industry because it's a noble thing to do, but they work hard, and boy, do they play hard.
Right.
So we saw crystal methamphetamine. Sorry, English is my second language right now. So we saw crystal methamphetamine, prostitution, racketeering, just literally organized crime come to our city. And then the flood of 2011 happened and destroyed our town Katrina style. Mm. So if you look at the pictures of Katrina of New Orleans in Minot, North Dakota, you're going to see similar images.
Yeah, I remember that. And it was crazy to see that kind of stuff.
And it devastated our town. So we had the federal government come in, you know, like the CBT training that you have for, you know, ICS and NIMS, the National Incident Management System. I actually got to see those CBTs come into full effect. So I was working 12-hour days for like 4 months straight. So about that time, I'm like, I got to get the heck out of here. It's been fun. It's been good. I need to get back to my desert roots because this coldest day of my life was 70 below zero. They're like, I don't know how that's possible. It's called science. So left at that time and then joined the Chandler Police Department, which is a suburb of Phoenix. So about at this time now, it's about 250,000 people, a little over that, and about 350 officers sworn. And then joined the Chandler Police Department, and then I worked the streets my entire life, my entire career. So I did about 9.5, almost 10 years with the Chandler Police Department, and the majority of my time was patrol, street crimes, and gangs. That's all I did. I didn't do any. You'll quickly realize I have undiagnosed, unmedicated ADHD. So this podcast could go off the rails at any time.
Bring it.
Because I see a shiny object or a squirrel. So my 7th circle of hell is putting me in a cubicle and expecting me to be doing paperwork all day. So I spoke to in my career, I spoke to about a little over 1,000 gang members, from Mexican Mafia to, Bloods, Crips, Mongols, Hells Angels, and everybody in between. Peckerwoods, the white boys, they're crazy. Native American gangs from Warrior Society to Dene. So that's really my passion in law enforcement is talking to people with face tattoos and making poor life decisions. So my idea of a traffic stop was the minute I stopped you and I noticed you had legal guns, legal drugs, legal sums of money, and no face tattoos, you don't fit my description. You're not the droid that I want. So I did that. Then I became a firearms instructor for AZ Post, then became an active shooter instructor for federal law enforcement training centers. So I did that. And then I finally started Guardian, got divorced. I always say that is, I became a real cop, got divorced. And I was teaching at a local gun range. And, at the end of my divorce, and this woman walks in as an instructor, and her name is Karen. And, I don't want to sound chauvinistic or misogynistic, but I'm like, who's this chick? And found out her background. So my wife did 11 years with the Chicago Police Department, and then she did 10 years as an air marshal. So she was born and raised Chicago PD. Her dad was 32 years in Chicago. And so we started teaching together, and it was great because, I think I'm a pretty darn good instructor on my own, but my wife is a pretty darn good instructor. But when we came together, it was just synergistic, not just on a romantic level, but a professional level.
You guys complemented each other's training methods.
Yeah. And the big thing was, and it's no disrespect to a lot of those training groups out there, but I see a lot of husband and wife training groups. And the wife is usually a stay-at-home mom or whatever the case may be. And that's a full-time job. Don't get me wrong. And then the husband's like a former Navy SEAL or a police officer, and they want to teach together. But when my wife and I come together teaching, I have a lot of women or even men in the class. They're like, you didn't teach your wife anything. I'm like, no, all of those experiences were absent me. And a majority of my experiences in my career were absent her. We come as equals. Man, woman. I know that scary words right now. We're using gender identifying.
You have to use a person who lactates. That's
exactly right.
And then person who cuts grass. That's the other one.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, not for you. I don't think you probably have any grass out there in Chandler, but
no, I purposely don't. 60 acres of grass in Ohio. I'm done with that. So we came as equals, and then how do I say it? We check a lot of demographic boxes. Male, female. The male and the female have separate experiences from one another. Then we're a family. So I have a daughter from a previous marriage. So we're in that mixed family block. And then we own a business together, and that's like the 7th circle of hell sometimes. Your CEO is your wife in so many ways.
Yes. I'm also married, and my wife and I work for the same company, different profession, but same company. And sometimes it can certainly get sketchy.
Yeah. So I have to go to the wife sometimes and go, hey, we got to spend money on some medical kits. And I got to ask permission from the CEO to spend money on Guardian. So yeah.
Okay. So you, Air Force background,
Yep.
went to started working at Minot, just outside of the base, did law enforcement there, moved back to Chandler and did almost 10 years there in Chandler, and then decided one day to get married and start a gun company. Roger, I think we're all caught up.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Answer to a simple question.
No, I need to know where you came from, right? And I think the people, something we saw recently, man, and somebody used the term vet bro. I don't know if you've ever heard that term or not.
Oh, yeah.
But you get these guys that are, with the record gun sales that we've seen over the past few years, and then even before that, it's like it's cyclical. It's almost as if it's on an every 4 or 8 year cycle. You see like these weird gun drops and then gun buys. It's crazy, but you see all these gun sales, and then everybody wants to be a firearms instructor, right? They're like, "Ooh, I can make money in this," right? And then they're fly by night. They set up, they do some hack training. They're not covering their field of fire. You see they'll watch a YouTube video and watch somebody do vehicle ambush or something like that, and then next thing you know, you see their Instagram and they've got cars parked and they're swinging muzzles and lasering things and like watching it. What the hell is that? And it's just, so what I like to try to do, first of all, Josh, nobody comes on this podcast that isn't credentialed, right? So I sought you out. I found you out in Arizona. I said, hey, this guy's got it kind of figured out. And I'm on a mission to talk to 50 firearms instructors from 50 states. That way we could kind of, if anybody's on if I'm traveling, I say, hey, you know what, I'm going to stop in Arizona and check this guy out. Or if I'm there on training, I work in the defense industry. So a lot of people that, build helicopters out there in Scottsdale, and a lot of people go out there, and it's like, well, shit, if we're traveling out there to go to Bell or something, maybe why don't we, try to hook up, or Sikorsky's out there as well. Why don't we try to hook up with Josh and see if we can get some training? So there's a lot of reasons why I decided to bring you out, but what's important is that you're credentialed, right? So telling the story and at least building that kind of authority, that confidence on the subject matter is important. So you take all the time you need to explain that. But now back to what I was going to ask you, the question. So Arizona is a constitutional carry state, and last I checked, that hasn't changed. Can you, so that I don't get it wrong, and somebody that spent so long in law enforcement and now trains in Arizona, can you explain what that means? Like what constitutional carry is?
Yeah. So constitutional carry means that you don't need permission from a government entity to carry concealed deadly weapon. And that's Arizona Revised Statute, which is our state statutes, but that applies to any state, whether that's now it's Iowa, Montana just went constitutional carry state, Utah just went constitutional carry. So that means that you do not need the permission from the government, whether it's a state or any political subdivision, to carry concealed deadly weapon, and that typically involves a firearm.
Right.
So you can carry a firearm openly or concealed in the state of Arizona without a concealed carry permit.
Roger, and that led me to my second question. So, talking to some people in this industry's bread and butter, at least in Maryland, you see these fly-by-night guys is, in Maryland, you have to pay a fee to exercise your right. And what I mean by that, and again, I don't know Arizona law in and out like you do, but, out here you have to take specific training to get what's called your HQL, your handgun qualification license. That's a state, mandate that you have to have before you can even go and buy a firearm from a firearms dealer. You have to take that training and be proficient in that. Understand Maryland law, shoot one live round, pay some fees, and then you can go and buy guns legally. And then the second, to wear and carry. So it's not just concealed carry. Everyone uses that term CCW or whatever, but it's not that.
So that's to buy a gun?
No, the HQL is to buy a gun. Yeah, a handgun. You have to pay a fee and you have to take training just to be able to purchase a gun from an FFL in the state of Maryland, a handgun, okay?
Wow.
And then to follow on with that, in Arizona, you could, as you mentioned, you could open or concealed carry without any documentation, right? Unless it, you can't have, it can't be a ghost gun, right? And, there's rules for carrying illegal firearms that are going to apply no matter where you're at. But in Maryland, you have to get what's called a wear and carry permit. To even open or concealed carry a handgun, you have to have a special permit. And Maryland is one of those states that is called a may issue state instead of a shall issue state. So you have to have good and substantial reason to be able to qualify to even, get a permit in the state of Maryland. Then it's at the discretion of the state police, Maryland State Police. It's a pain in the ass. But what I'm getting at is that in states like this, when you see this increase in gun purchases, you get these fly-by-night guys that want to pop up and start doing just the minimum training. And you'll see them in Denny's or something like that. They're charging everybody $50 and not really doing anything. And then just like taking a pencil and poking holes in a target and saying, all right, you scored a 50, you're good to go. Shit like that. It's sketchy as hell, and you're not helping anybody by doing that. I'm sure somebody's being served, but properly, but it's not the customer, and it's definitely not the good, honest businesses that are doing things right. But that's a lot of people's bread and butter in states like Maryland and others where you have to obtain training and then pay a fine to exercise your right. It's the concealed carry courses and it's the HQL courses. But in Arizona, you don't have to take that training to carry. But I know that you offer concealed carry courses. So why do you offer concealed carry courses in a state where nobody needs to take a concealed carry course to be able to conceal carry?
So very well put. So I've gotten that question from the spectrum of the professional way you asked that to me posting concealed carry classes, the Arizona concealed carry classes, and the FUD troll
going, oh my God, the fuddies.
I don't need your class to carry a gun. You want to shut up a troll so much, just tell them to write.
Yep.
Like, you're absolutely right. Well, why should I take a concealed carry class? Now, you did it in a professional way because you want to educate your viewers. So the first thing I say is, God forbid you learn something. So our concealed carry class is really a law and legal seminar. So since the 2010 repeal for the requirement to have a concealed carry permit to carry a concealed deadly weapon, yeah, that's great. We became constitutional carry, but it also rescinded the minimum training a concealed carry individual has to train for, which is scary, like professionally speaking. If you're going to do a concealed carry class, you should know the laws front to back. You shouldn't be an NRA instructor for like a month. I'm sorry, it's just no disrespect. You have certified instructors, you have those credentialed instructors, and then you have quality instructors. And so the big thing is, God forbid you learn something, because I've had a lot of students in my class, a lot of chin scratching, a lot of head scratching, a lot of, that mustache area, a lot of that, like their shock look, because they read something online or they heard it from a police officer or they just thought that the law was different. Mm-hmm. And now I'm reading them. Now I'm not reading it verbatim, Arizona Revised Statute. I'm contextualizing it so that they can understand it, but I'm explaining situations that apply to law that's black and white. And people are like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, I regret to inform you that I have had so many Google and Wikipedia attorneys in the backseat of my police car on the way to 4th Avenue Jail.
I bet.
And they're like, but I thought, or I know my rights. Like, and sadly, you're being educated in it. I have a job to do. And, you did something, and they're like, well, I had good intentions. But I also can tell you that some of the worst things in this world are paved on the path of good intentions.
That's right.
And it, to use the movie Fury, Brad Pitt, and he says the best. Ideals are peaceful. Like, ideals are peaceful, but the implementation is violent, right? It's violent.
That's right.
And so the big thing is the myth busting. The number one, God forbid you get educated, the reciprocity that you have. So you get 36 states. You don't have to be a resident of Arizona to get an Arizona concealed carry permit. So we're going to start teaching those classes in California. Mm-hmm. And so I had a guy ask me like, hey, can you do Arizona concealed carry classes in California? Well, this may be a dumb question, but we don't have any reciprocity with California. Don't carry guns in California. unless you got the unicorn permit.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's great, but if we have a California permit, limited reciprocity. If I have an Arizona permit, I get upwards of 36 states that I can carry in. So I get more reciprocity.
That's right.
The other thing is that a lot of people don't realize is there are still places in Arizona that you have to have a concealed carry permit to carry a concealed deadly weapon to include a firearm. And people are like, I didn't know that. Like,
what are some of those places? What are some of those places?
So, for example, like an establishment that is licensed for consumption on premises. So like a bar, restaurant, brewery, and all those other places, to include Chipotle.
That's right. Chipotle in Arizona sells beer, doesn't it?
Beer and tequila.
Oh, really?
Because they do margaritas.
Okay.
So they're licensed as a restaurant, which is a Series 12 in our liquor laws. So by the letter of the law, if you wish to carry a concealed deadly weapon to include a firearm, one, you have to have a permit issued by Arizona or a permit that Arizona recognizes, as well as it has to be concealed and you can't consume on premises. So if you meet all three and it's not posted, the Arizona Revised Statute 4-229, which prohibits firearms, and that's posted by the proprietor, then you can carry a concealed deadly weapon. And people are like, I didn't know that. You mean to tell me I've constitutionally carried in Chipotle? I'm like, whoa. I'm not here to open up cases on people.
Right.
I'm just here to educate.
Right.
You know, it's not that you have the right to remain silent. I don't have my badge on. You know, even when I was teaching as an active duty law enforcement officer, people would come up to me and go like, I did that. I'm like, I get that, but like, I'm not
here to forgive you.
I'm not in that capacity. Yeah, I'm not in that capacity.
Right.
I'm just here to educate. And I get a lot of people, and that's one of the places. But a lot of people are like, I just didn't know that. Like, that's what we're here for. The other thing we talk about is use of force. Mm-hmm. You know, what you can and can't do if somebody breaks into your house. I've had so many people tell me, well, if somebody comes to my house, I'm just going to smoke them. Okay. Right. Let's dispense with that. And so like in the state of Arizona, you can't just shoot somebody on site on your property. I've had so many people go, well, in Texas, wait, what state are you in right now? Mm-hmm. Arizona. What state laws apply to you? Arizona Revised Statutes. What class did you sign up for? Arizona Concealed Carry class. And so it debunks a lot of myths. Mm-hmm. Same thing as, do you shoot to kill? People go, I asked them, do you shoot to kill? People go, oh, hell yeah. I'm like, no, we don't. And this is how I contextualize it. We use deadly physical force to neutralize a deadly physical threat, and the unintended consequences of us using deadly force on somebody else is death of that person. That's deadly force. I don't shoot to kill.
Right.
I'm using, so let's agree that a firearm is a gunpowder activated hole poking device.
That's right.
That's all it is.
Yep.
And so my job with that deadly weapon is to change their behavior. And if 1 shot, 2 shots, 10 shots, hashtag all the shots, take and neutralize that person, then that's how many it takes.
Yeah, and that's controversial though at times, because at least in the law enforcement world, right, you'll come up before a bureau where, you know, they'll look at you, and especially if this makes it to court, they'll look and they'll say, okay, the first and second shot were justified. Yep. The third shot maybe was justified because maybe he was getting up, but the fourth and fifth and sixth shot were not justified, right? So the scrutiny that can be applied to N amount of shots, there's a fight to be had on that. And what I'm trying to say is this, right? A lot of people, and the way that we tell it out here is, you know, once the gunfight is over, the real fight has just begun. And that's the fight to keep your ass out of jail, right? And, you know, you are trying to use a force multiplier to defend yourself and your family, you know, to the greatest level possible, up to and including the death of that assailant, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. It just oozes beauty. It just oozes
Sorry,
beauty.
I'm shaking my pen at the screen there. I need to put that thing down.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful.
You know,
that's well said. Sorry, that's what I mean by it.
Okay,
it's very well said.
And that's what it is. But once that threat is neutralized, why did you shoot him again? or the third time, or the fourth time, or the fifth time. And that's why.
And that's
go ahead.
And that's what I tell people. Like I had a gentleman in my class. Like so, I explained like 5 shots. Right, you shoot somebody 5 times. How many assessments are you making? And they go, well, 2. I'm like, no, 7. You assess before that first shot. You shoot, assess, shoot, assess, shoot, assess, shoot, assess, shoot, assess, and then assess on the back end. So you assess on that back end, and he's like, well, I don't agree with that. You don't have to.
Yeah, you better agree with it, because now you're just, shooting for the fun of it if you didn't assess the situation.
And I finally realized the point. I'm like, it's your gunfight, man. And that's how you articulate it. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, the courts are going to look at that.
Yep.
You have like the whole use of force incident, right? What we call in the Graham v. Connor totality of the circumstances. What split-second decisions you're making based on rapidly evolving tense circumstances, based on the totality of those circumstances, in which hindsight's not 20/20. And that's U.S. Supreme Court case law. Now, Graham v. Connor is a law enforcement case law, but that objective reasonableness is directly applied to citizen use of forces.
Right.
Like we're not going to directly apply it, but you can use that as a structure on how we deem whether force is justifiable or not. Mm-hmm. And so I had the gentleman, he goes, well, I'm just going to shoot 5 rounds and hope for the best.
What if it takes 6?
Break it to you.
What if it takes 8?
Yeah.
So you're going to run out. You're going to run out of 5 rounds, and then now what? Right?
Yeah.
You have to assess. You're right. 100%.
And I realize the whole point is hope don't float. And I'm sorry. It's just if you're going to shoot 5 rounds, and I explained it just like you did, you're one of the few people that get it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you're one of the few people that get it. That shot 1 and 2 can be justified. 3 can be unjustified. 4 and 5 can be justified. And guess what happens to the entire thing?
It's all unjustified. You're going to jail.
It's all unjustified.
Yeah.
So
unlawful use of force in that instance.
Correct. So you have a totality of the circumstances, the entire incident. But if you shot 5 rounds, you have 5 use of force events in that entire incident.
That's right.
And you're going to be judged on every round that you fire.
Yeah, if they got a good lawyer, you are.
Yeah, of course.
And you need to be ready to defend that. That's right, 100%.
And that's my job, is for them to make the proper decisions when time counts and life counts. And the reason I'm teaching it from that perspective is I've survived many critical incidents in my career because how I talk, how I articulate it. And it's not only the legal and the administrative sides of using force as a police officer or a citizen, because it's the same. People don't realize that is the use of force for police officers and citizens from a prima facie face value is the same. The only thing that changes, so you have the citizen. You can use any force reasonably necessary up until including deadly force to protect yourself or an innocent third party, at least in Arizona. The police officer has that same right, but the addition to that is that they can use any force reasonably necessary up until including deadly force to effect an arrest. That's it. It's just an addition. But when it comes to self-defense, it's as a general scale, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to look at it from that same scale. And so just people, that's when they come to our class and they're like, I didn't know that. I'm like, and that's okay.
And that's the reason why you're teaching concealed carry courses in a state that you don't have to take that course to be able to carry. And that's what I was trying to root out. And that's something that the fly-by-night guys aren't picking up on, right? They teach you, and I'm going to get to a question here in a minute. I'm going to ask you about your fundamentals. But, I was talking with Matt Watson, and I think I might have even mentioned this to you, right? One of the biggest things he wants people to remember after attending one of his classes is, all right, you've taken the training, you know how to defend yourself. You find yourself in a situation where you have to exercise deadly force. Now what, right? Are you willing every day when you carry that firearm to face the consequences of possibly killing somebody, right? And dealing with that PTSD or that weight or those, you know, sleepless nights thinking about, did I make the right decision? All that other shit, right? There's so much more that goes to the responsibility of carrying a firearm besides, oh, it's legal in my state so I can do it and I'm going to be a badass, right? And I'm going to walk around Arizona Mills with a freaking, you know, and oh, shit pops off. Guess what? I got this under control, right? And it's like, come on, guy. So,
good luck with that.
It feels like, to me, Joshua, it feels like at least you're doing it for the right reasons, and that law is important. And, you know, I talked to a lot of people in this industry, and the law is what separates, you know, good sound knowledge of the law, at least in your state, is what separates good instructors from bad instructors. And it seems like you're approaching it from the right direction.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we have the concealed carry class, but then we take it to the next step and we do a use of force simulation class.
And that's what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah.
So what I noticed, so I was stalking you as I want to do.
Open source intelligence gathering.
That's what it's called. That's what tactically acquiring your content to use on my own channel is what I was doing. No, I'm kidding. But so whenever I was in the Army, we did a lot of training with our M16s. And part of that was, and it was, at least in basic, it was blessed, man, because you'd be sweating your balls off down in South Carolina. And then one day you had like indoor range training, right? Sim training. So you would take, you know, you get to go into like this nice dark air conditioned module unit, lay down in the prone and like shoot targets, right? It was like playing duck hunt all over again. But, you know, it was use of force training. And I was watching your channel and your Facebook page, and I saw that you guys are doing very similar type, you know, situational use of force training. And I wanted to ask you this specifically is, you know, what, let me actually make sure I'm using the right words here, because I actually took time and wrote this down in a sentence. Right? I wanted to get this question right, and it's pretty simple. It's how much has technology impacted the way that you administer training?
Ooh, that's a good one. So it's huge. You know, when I was in the Air Force, I did the FATS, the Firearms Training Simulator. You had the tethered M16 or the M9. I had that. And then we did simulations like crazy. Force on force. So force on force is good. It's a valuable training tool, but it has to be corralled and it has to be done properly. Because I see a lot of force on force training just become like, if you and I are, you know, I'm the assailant, you're the good guy, and I shoot you, and then it becomes this like shoot 'em up fest. Like, that hurt, let me shoot you. Oh, that hurt, let me shoot you. And let's just mag dump on each other. And if it's not corralled, and if you're not using your role players the proper way, the continuity of training between students, say you're doing the same scenario, lacks.
Sure.
And so you can't see true human performance unless you control that. With simulation, I can control all of different variable factors. I can control, like, for example, we use the TI system right now, made by TI Outdoors, and we use it at C2 Tactical. So it's a one-screen simulator. They have it's essentially a SIRT pistol that shoots an IR laser on the screen. But it's not just throwing people into scenarios and just going, go forth and fail. Everything is measurable. So we explain what acute stress is. I explain that under stress, you're going to use a different part of your brain than when you're sitting here right here. The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic, which is our sex, rest, and digest. Your sympathetic, which is fight, flight, or freeze. Then I talk about adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins, the three major chemicals that get dumped in that. Adrenaline gives you the strength to fight or flight. Endorphins shut off. Well, actually, don't shut off. Yeah, they just mask pain receptors. And then the cortisol shuts off all non-life essential body functions.
Right.
So cortisol will shut off your sex, rest, digest. So in that moment, you're not worried about procreating. You're not worried about digesting your food. You're not worried about resting. Cortisol also shuts off your immune system and your growth.
Right.
So we talk about the acute stress in a true body alarm response. So then we explain that. Then we explain the different big two parts of your brain that get activated and deactivated in stress. Your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. So prefrontal cortex is our logic. So your, IQ, reasoning, critical thinking, all of those that. The great thing about the prefrontal cortex is it possesses language skills. So it has the language center where you're at. The amygdala, which is what we call middle brain or reptile brain, is where our passions, our fears, and our desires are possessed. The bad thing about that is it doesn't have a language center. So I'm going to call you to the carpet right now. Since you've been asking me questions, I'm going to ask you a question. Here, you ready?
All right, send it.
2 + 2.
4.
Why do you love your wife?
Yeah. Well, that's a dynamic question. I love her now because I guess I have to. I don't know. I don't have any other choice. No, wait. Let me.
That's not a rhetorical question.
Let me take it back. Right. I don't have any. All right. Okay. What are you trying to prove? Let me hit you with that. What are we getting at?
What I'm trying to prove is I'm going to dig you out of your proverbial hole with neuroscience. So when I say 2 + 2, it's finite, obviously. Now, you can't help the 2 + 2 = 5 people. They also believe the earth is flat and we didn't land on the moon and all that stuff. So 2 + 2 is finite, as well as it's our logical. So that's where we access the prefrontal cortex, all our IQ, our knowledge base. The great thing is it's also where the language center is located. Then when I go, why do you love your wife? You go from prefrontal cortex to the amygdala part of your brain. So you're now in a part of your brain that doesn't possess language skills. When I ask, why do you love your wife? You know what you're feeling in that moment. Like, this is what I feel. This is, she's the mother of my children, but you can't express it because in that moment you're in the amygdala. And so you're like, oh shit. Well, you have the desire and the passion of your wife, but then you also have the fear that you better answer this question right.
Yeah. So it's a very passionate part of your brain. And we all know, right? And I think you might be going somewhere with this, but what good decision has ever been made in the heat of passion, right? Is that where you're trying to go?
Yeah. And what we say is it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be concerned about your safety in these critical incidents. But this is what we see in the body-worn camera footage of an officer that shoots a suspect. And they typically land on the ground. And we see the police officer going, get on the ground, get on the ground, get on the ground. And you're watching them and you're like, dude, they're already on the ground. The problem is they're in an amygdala attack.
So there was this emotional response that they couldn't vocalize, right? And their frontal brain was just kicking in and just saying the repetitive,
No, their middle brain.
Right, so when they were saying get on the ground. Okay. No, I'm tracking. I believe I'm tracking.
Yeah, they're in the middle brain that doesn't have critical thinking skills and problem solving skills. So they go into a command loop. That's what we commonly refer to it as. Show me your hands, show me your hands, show me your hands. Don't move, don't move, don't move, don't move. So that's what we call reaction versus a response. So they're reacting to the situation and they get into that command loop, right? The same thing I see a lot of police officers as well as citizens. We do force on force. And suspect has their hands in their pockets. And they say, show me your hands. And I do that. Did I comply with their orders? Yeah.
Yeah.
I showed you my hands. You just manifested that because you reacted. And so I go through the whole process of getting somebody's hands out of their pockets in a safe way. Hey, don't move. When I tell you, and only when I tell you to, I want you to take your hands out of your pockets slowly. They better be open and they better be empty. Because if you have anything in your hands, as you take your hands out of your pockets, I can't guarantee your safety. Did I tell them I'm going to shoot them? No. I just simply told them I can't guarantee your safety.
Right.
So then I say, go ahead, take your hands out of your pockets. And if they move slower. Take your hands and put them above your head. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And as they raise their hand, guess what happens to their shirt?
Yeah, sure.
It raises. Then I can see their waistband. So then I have control over that subject, and I'm being very clear, very concise, and I'm ensuring that my transmission of communication is properly received by the individual. It's true what we call tactical communication, that we're conveying our desires and our wants to a suspect, however stupid they are. Sorry. But God forbid you get into an incident in the middle of the street. Do you think anybody's going to come help you?
Not today.
What are they going to do
today?
Facebook Live? Somebody's getting shot today.
So the force on force stuff is it's something else, and you're starting to see more people kind of offering that active home defense, force on force training, personal force, or or eliminating kind of controlling force. I was listening to somebody talk about this the other day, and one of the things I like about simulation training and stuff like that, if it's done, as you mentioned, in a controlled manner, is a lot of people, right, are very good at putting sights on a target, but have never put sights on another human being, right? And there's something psychological that happens when you point, because, I mean, think about it. If you're a responsible gun owner, one of your 4 fundamentals is, right, never point a gun at something, the way I say it, never point a gun at something you don't intend to destroy, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're constantly, you're looking, you're watching your laser, right? What I call it, your laser. You're not flagging anybody with your muzzle, right? You're going up and over or down and under and stuff like that. You're never really putting sights on a human being ever, right? Unless you intend to destroy him. So that, and even, and I teach it to my kids, right? Even with like the Nerf gun stuff, at point, when they get to a certain age, to say, hey, don't point that at me, right? Let's be very safe. Treat it like it's a real gun, right? Because I just don't want any accidents to happen. But doing simulation training, even if it is up on the flat screen, right, and you're pointing a gun at a person, it starts to break down that situation, because if you train and train and train and train and train never to point a gun at a person, right, and then when the day comes where you need to point a gun at a person, there's a decision there, right? Now you're training. What they say is, in a moment of stress, you always revert to your highest level of training, right? Now, what's going to take over, right? Your quick draw, your sub-second draw, and eliminating a target without assessing the situation first and understanding your backdrop and all that other shit, that's what's going to kick in, right? And then you find out the guy's just pulling a cell phone out, or he's grabbing some girl to pull her into the road because she almost got ran over by a car, right? He wasn't trying to kidnap her, right? Assessing the situation, slowing down your draw, practicing your reaction to the situation is important, but then putting sights on a human being is also something that we just don't train. So Correct. If you could, when you're doing the force on force stuff, which is another reason I think you're doing a great job out there, is you're at some point, worst case scenario, at some point somebody's gonna have to shoot somebody, right? I mean, nobody wants that to happen, but you damn well better be prepared if it does happen. And eventually you're gonna have to point that gun at a human being. And as Matt Watson was saying, eventually you may end up having to squeeze that trigger, and then you got to live with yourself.
Correct.
Putting sights on a human being is something that people just don't train. And how can we do that in a safe way, right? Other than sim training, right? Now, be that, Correct. Using technology or using simulation or anything else like that, paintball, whatever, I think that's value added. And in my opinion, once somebody is proficient in the use of their firearm, static, right, and then they transition to some dynamic drills, then the next logical step is to get into that force on force stuff, right? Because that's where you're going to get the best, the most prepared. But
well, people realize, they're like, Josh, I get it. I'm like, no, we can quantifiably show it. So before I start my use of force simulation class, I have just a simple pulse oximeter that I put on their finger, and now I can see their resting heart rate. So what we've seen from quantifiable analysis, like actual data,
right?
We've seen their heart rate double in an immersive environment such as that simulator. And so when people go, we take their resting heart rate, they go through the scenario, and then while I'm doing the after action and asking the questions, my wife is putting the pulse ox on them. So typically if they start with 60 beats per minute, they're at 120, 130. And people go, holy crap. To me, as an instructor for use of force, that is a desirable outcome from a physiological standpoint. That's what I want them to be in. So then while they're cooking, after they just potentially shot somebody and their body is cooking, I'm going to ask them one question to start with. Tell me what happened. Now, they're going to start with, well, I could have done this, or I should have done this, or I would have done this. The couldas, the wouldas, and the shouldas. Negative. I don't want that. Tell me what happened from beginning to end. Now, I explained to them before the class starts that you don't have the right to remain silent. You don't have the right to have an attorney present. This is a learning experience. And of course, I advocate that if, God forbid, you get in a shooting and police start asking you questions that you're not comfortable with, I would seek counsel.
Yeah, shut up and lawyer up. Shut up and lawyer up immediately.
And just be respectful about it. Don't cross your hands and go, I'm not going to talk to you. I know my rights. You can put it to the way of saying, listen, I just went through a traumatic event. I'm not in a good spot. And any more questions, I would like to have attorney present.
Right.
You know, and I'll answer any and all questions. I'll stay at the station as long as you need me to be. But before any more questions can be answered, I'd like to have an attorney present.
Yep.
And see how the difference is? I said the same thing. But like when you ask the question, you know, why would I get a concealed carry permit in Arizona when it's a constitutional carry? That's one way to ask it. Or you can ask it the way you asked it, in a very professional, I guess, tactful manner.
Yeah, kind of tactful, respectful way. Yep, absolutely.
And tactful. And that's what it's all about. So when we put them in the scenario, we can truly see change in their body and their mind. And so I've seen very successful people, CEOs, CIOs, CFOs, very successful people in our use of force simulation class. And they look like they're making boneheaded decisions. Like they're just like, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe I didn't do anything, or I did do that. It's like, yeah, that's fine. Like it's the whole point of this is not to demean, demoralize, degrade.
Right.
It's meant to educate. And when they realize, because my goal is to turn them down a road that they don't have a GPS map for. Like, I think you and I do our training. It's not that we're comfortable with violence, but we've seen it. We've been acclimated to violence. And so the pushback that we have from violence or a confrontation, it's not that we invite it. It's just, okay, here it comes. We're going to deal with it. But there's a large demographic of this world that's never been in a disagreement or in a fist fight, you know, or have had to point a gun at somebody.
Yep.
And this is the first time, like you said, this is the first time they've actually pointed a gun at a humanoid object that interacts with them, that may tell them their name. And you may go from very civil to, oh my gosh, I just shot this person. And then when my after action comes, I ask them questions just like a police officer would ask. And if their answers may not make sense, I may actually, and I would give them forewarning, that I may ask questions that may be accusatory nature.
Yeah, kind of trying to trap them into some shitty situation.
Like for example, somebody goes, they shoot somebody, and they know why they shot them in that moment. And then they go, well, I think he had a knife. You think? So let me ask you a question. Are you thinking now, or are you thinking then? So you're just telling me that, so it's a yes or no question. Do you agree that you 100% shot and killed somebody, but you're not 100% why?
Yep.
That you don't know, you think? And I don't want you to make up anything. I don't want you to lie to me. But if your eyes saw it, and we get into ocular science in our class about how our eyes can move rapid amounts, over 900 degrees per second, but our brain doesn't cognitively process it. Because my job is to turn you down a road that your mind GPS doesn't have directions to.
That's good. Yeah, I mean,
and when you see the freeze,
and
when you see the freeze in them, it's not cowardice. It's, imagine, I think we both have it. We're in a foreign land, doesn't have to be in overseas, but we don't know anything about the city. And we turn onto a street that's like brand new, just been paved. and your GPS isn't updated. And what does your GPS say? Recalculating.
Yeah.
Recalculating.
That's right.
And you're in the middle of a field. Or you go over a new bridge, the GPS says you're in water.
Yeah.
What I just did in that critical moment was turn them down a street that they don't have answers to or a GPS map for. And they're like, holy buckets, this is scary stuff. I'm like, well, it's not meant to scare you. It's meant to empower you that there's a way out of this. Mm-hmm. And it's through training and acclimation. And that's the goal. So when I do that, they're like, hey, let's get back on the horse. Let's do another scenario. And then progressively what I see after they do scenario after scenario, they make better decisions in that moment. And it's quantifiable. Mm-hmm. Like their heart rate settles. They make sound decisions. And then when I ask them to articulate what they just did, it's beautiful. And I'm not trying to make light of killing somebody. Right. What I'm saying is my job is to keep your ass out of jail, to keep you on the right side of the law. In U.S. Supreme Court case law, now I'm in the Ninth Circus Court, the Ninth Circus Court. I mean circus in its finest sense. All of those case laws, when I have them starts using Arizona Vice statutes and U.S. Supreme Court case law, Ninth Circuit, it's beautiful. And I'm like, that's an informed individual.
That's what you're trying to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
I mean, that's what, and I was going to ask you another question here.
I know. We're running over. I'm sorry.
Oh, as I mentioned, we could run this son of a bitch into the ground, man. I don't care. I do not care. So let me button up the last question first, though, right? I asked you, how much has technology impacted the way you administer training? So let me just put it a little bit simpler. Do you think that you could administer the level of training that you're administering today without technology? Or, to the same, 100% standard?
Yeah, no. Right. I would. So the simple answer is no. So I break down gunfighting, not gunfighting into three things. First is the knowledge transfer of where you can and can't carry, use of force law, like interaction with law enforcement. That's a huge thing that I get asked in Arizona. I get pulled over by a police officer. I have a gun in the car. How do I navigate it safely and responsibly and respectfully? Taught by the guy that's been pulling you over for 10, 15, almost 15 years. Like, I'm going to tell you my perspective.
Right.
And it's not that I'm going down the hallway and or down the traffic stop and doing that. So the knowledge transfer is number one. Then the actual shooting of the firearm, that's number two. So lining up the sights, fundamentals. And essentially, I can train a monkey to do that. I'm not being disrespect to firearms instructors, but I can teach you how to shoot faster and more accurate than you've ever shot in your life. But that's part two. And then part three is the amalgamation of both. So you have the knowledge that you think you know or that you have of where you can and can't carry, who you can and can't shoot, the use of force laws. Then if you need to shoot somebody, how to use those fundamentals to properly neutralize that threat, and then task saturate them with decision-making and stress. And that's the true essence of gunfighting.
Sure.
You have to make that. And I don't think we could have accomplished that without technology.
I'm a big fan. And you said that you can do some travel work with what you do. And I'm going to hit you with the question here at the end, but I might as well get it out of the way now. Is it possible for you to take this simulation training and go on the road with it, possibly out here to Maryland, and offer a course up here to our team?
So without violating any NDAs, I'm not going to do that. It's in the works.
All right, very good.
So we had a meeting with a technology company with a simulator system that fits in a 1300 series Pelican case. So, a medium-sized Pelican case. And it's a fraction of the simulators that you have to set up and tear down. So I could actually fly with this simulator system, no problem.
All right, sweet.
I don't have to ship like 1600 series Pelican cases and drop $250,000. So the way of the future is virtual reality is the way of the future. The goggles, and then you interface with a gun type interface in your hand. That's all I can say about that, but it's the way of the future. And Guardian has already talked to a technology company to implement that into our training.
Very cool.
And now we can travel. So now we don't need a training site. Like, we've done concealed carry classes, stop the bleed programs, CPR programs, all of those programs in the comfort of somebody's living room. So we get a group together, we'll talk about it, and then we'll come to you. And that's what we specialize in. So we can travel everywhere. So we have a couple California contacts, and then we have a couple Colorado contacts. And then I'm looking at going to the East Coast and doing some law enforcement training for them. So I tell people this: there's no idea too crazy as long as it's in our wheelhouse, because I'm a huge part and proponent of know your lane.
Yeah, sure.
Just knowing your lane, because I see a lot of instructors in this world that are teaching completely outside their lane. And I couldn't walk into a special operations group and understand what a special operations group does. And it's knowing your lane.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of use of force experts, and I despise the term expert unless you're a subject matter expert certified by a court.
Yeah.
You're not an expert, man. I believe I'm a master. I master my craft every day. If I come to Maryland and do a class at your place, do you think there's a possibility, a great possibility, that I can learn from you? Of course. Like, it's collaborative learning. And like, people are like, hey, Josh, how did you build this? I've stood on the shoulders of giants. I've just known when to shut my mouth and listen, and then know when to speak up and be a teacher.
Right.
The concept of always a student and sometimes a teacher. And I prescribe to the Bruce Lee model of teaching, in that the teacher is not a giver of truth. A teacher's job is to be a guide for the student to find their own truth. I'm just simply a guide. I'm a conveyance. And I'm not going to teach you dogma. I'm not going to throw it down your throat. I'm just going to teach you a way. So the big thing is, yeah, we can travel. If there's no idea too crazy, as long as I really have like 4 rules. It better not be illegal. It better not be immoral. It better not be unethical. And of course, it has to make financial sense.
Sure.
Like the no-goes is obviously the first 3. The fourth one, okay, we could discuss finances and make it the best for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no idea too crazy.
What we're trying to do, and I might actually end up just cutting out this whole block here because it may not make sense to the guys watching this shit or listening to what we're talking about. But what we'd like to do is bring in, because again, it is knowing your lane, right? Ryan and I and our team here at PTP, we don't do that kind of simulation training, but you do. And maybe that's something that could serve our customer base, right? Sure. Maybe that's something that, hey, this is a different offering. So we oftentimes, we bring in instructors from all over the country to come and teach their swim lane, right? So, we brought in Jason McCoy from Red Pass Training up in Utah. We brought out Matt Watson from Tactical Operations Consulting to come out and teach different home defense, vehicle ambush, different stop to bleed stuff. Like, we bring out people where that's their specialty, because sure, why reinvent the wheel, right? And again, of course, right, it does have to make financial sense for both teams, but and if Arizona or coming out to Maryland's not a problem, maybe we can come out to, if you would be up to it, maybe I'll fly out to Arizona because I got family out there anyways, and maybe I could attend one of your courses. What do you think?
Say when.
All right, cool. I'll be in touch with that.
When. Yes, sir.
All right. Now, let me get to some of these. I don't know, man. Am I sharing my screen with you? Because you literally just said something that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. I'm not. No. I'm not, Josh. I'm not.
I was like, wait, what?
I actually saw that you kind of follow that Bruce Lee mantra, right? A teacher is never a giver of truth. He's a guide, a pointer to the truth that each student must find for himself. And I was going to ask you about that and why you kind of follow that mantra, but you did a great job of explaining it. And I have kept you here for quite a bit, but I would like to ask you, I think, so some of my generic questions that I generally ask everybody, right, are basically around the philosophy of firearms and firearms training, and we've definitely covered that. But one of kind of my signature questions that I ask everybody is the same. And if the person listening right now, if you could imagine this person was in your class and you were sending him off or her off to do great things in the world of being a responsible firearms owner, what 3 fundamentals would you hope that person took with them?
I think the first thing is just be a good person.
Okay.
Know when to push the envelope and when not. Like being a gang cop, for much of my career, people are like, Josh, how did you talk to these dangerous individuals and not get your butt kicked? Like, I've never had a fight with a gang member. Like, knocking on wood, thank God. It's always been the drunk. Typically it's a guy with an affliction shirt, tap out hat, bedazzled jeans, and he thinks he's a cage fighter. And next thing you know, I'm fighting him. So just be a good person. If you follow that and just go, you know what? I want to be a role model for my family, for my kids, and just knowing when to fight and when not to fight. Mm-hmm. And that's just being a good person. That's number 1. Number 2, I think the biggest thing is the best fight that we can ever have is when we don't have it all. I've been in so many critical incidents in my career that I've done things wrong, completely wrong. And somehow I still live through it. And I look at my partner and I go, how are they ever living that word? Did we get through that? And then just a couple months ago, I buried a good friend of mine, Chris Farrar, with the Chandler Police Department. And some of the worst critical incidents I've ever been in my career were with Chris. And he was ran over by a suspect during a pursuit, K-9 officer. And I wasn't there for him. And a DPS officer contacted me and said, hey, Josh, you were friends with Chris. I'm like, I was. He went through some pretty dark valleys in his life and his career, but he came out on top. And I had to ask him. I said, I got to ask you a question. He's like, just stop. I know what you're going to ask. I said, but I have to ask it. Did he do everything right? Did he go out with his boots on? It's like, absolutely. I literally watched Chris get run over by this fucking scumbag. My words, not his. And he did everything right. And he still bought the farm. And I had to bury him. Ella French was just killed a couple days ago in Chicago.
Yep.
That hit my wife pretty hard. She didn't know Officer French, but the fact that she's Chicago PD, and my wife still has a lot of friends that are still serving in Chicago PD, and her heart's in Chicago. And watching that town, that beautiful city, be destroyed by what it is. So I guess the first one is be a good person. The second one is don't go in fights that you don't need to be in. Mm-hmm. The best fight you can ever have is the one you don't have at all. And probably the third one is just continue your training. That training is not a one-time event. It's a journey. I look at my students and I go, do you remember in your career the first day that you went to work or you're on your career, the first year, how bad did you do at your job?
Right.
Like the most dangerous thing that I ever did in my police career wasn't gangs, tactical operations, teaching police officers how to shoot. And that's dangerous. Like live fire shoot houses. Like I'd come home and my wife, she would look at me and go, that was a live fire shoot house day. Yes, I need a whiskey and a Xanax. No, I don't take Xanax, but I'm just saying, like, I am wired up. But the most dangerous job was being a field training officer. Literally, me as a veteran officer sitting in the passenger seat, with a brand new police officer in the driver's seat, and they look like they're 12. They look like the Make-A-Wish kid that wanted to be a cop for a day. Just graduated from the academy. And he goes, I'm a real police officer.
Right.
And you're like, no, you're not. Why'd you want to become a cop? I wanted to make a positive influence on my community. So what you do is you take him down to the nastiest alleyway and talk to that one tweaker, that meth addict, that you know that is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and tell them, go make a positive influence on his life. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Go play social worker to that guy.
Yeah, it's like on Breaking Bad when Hank took. Did you watch Breaking Bad? If you haven't,
I watched it off and on.
Man, it's such a good show.
I can probably catch up.
Don't worry about it. There's a scene in there where Hank, who's a law enforcement officer, takes his nephew to go to this prostitute. It's hilarious. It's a good scene, right? To kind of like scare him straight or whatever. But
yeah.
Well,
it's just, so I guess that's the three is to round it out is be a good person. Just be a good member of society. The second one is, the best fight you can ever have is that you have no fight at all. And then probably the third one is just training is a continual event. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen one time.
Right.
And people are like, Josh, like, how do you shoot that fast? How do you shoot that accurately? I had the distinct honor of teaching Kyle Schwarber in the Chicago Cubs outfield. Kyle Schwarber is a former Chicago Cub, World Series champion in 2016. My wife is a Chicago White Sox fan, so she's actually watching the Sox play the Yankees in the Field of Dreams right now. But we taught him, and all the concepts that we teach are based on athletic human performance factors. And he's like, how do you shoot that fast? So when I asked him to do a drill, he's like, well, show me, demonstrate for me. So now I have a World Series champion in baseball calling me to the carpet on my field, field. So I perform it, at a mastery level, and that's what I believe in. And he's like, how do you shoot that fast? Like, how do you throw a baseball from the warning track outfield to home plate with maybe one bounce?
Right.
How do you hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball? Because if you threw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, this is what happened.
Yep.
Nope.
That's right.
Not going to do it. And he's like, well, Josh, what's your speed? I'm like, this looks pretty good. Or putting it on top of a tee.
Yeah.
And now Kyle comes from a law enforcement family in Ohio. And I said, Kyle, just work with me for a second. You're playing a game to win a ring or a trophy. The people that I teach, you, your viewers, your watchers, your listeners, play a game that determines whether somebody lives or dies. So why don't we use the same human performance learning and factors to make athletes faster, think faster, move faster, jump higher, and our athletes shoot faster, more accurately?
I fucking love this, man.
Right?
This is some good stuff, Josh.
But
your process, your methods, your ideas, the why behind the why you do things the way you do it is profound, man. And sitting down there and taking it down and really applying a science-based approach to something that is relatively routine. I mean, yeah, it's fascinating. Well,
if you can read,
good job.
If you can read any book, and it's rough. A lot of these, all these concepts are open sourced. It's actually a book called Peak, written by Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole. I'm going to fair warn you, it's pretty dry reading, but it's actually a science-based approach on how athletes learn. Or you can go online and read any journal on neuroscience and human performance factors. What do professional athletes think like? And so I believe the mantra of the master has attempted more than the amateur has even tried.
Right.
Sorry. The master has failed more than the amateurs even tried. I've just worked the problem longer than anybody else, as Albert Einstein said the best. Mm-hmm. I've just worked the problem longer. That's it. It's not that I'm some, fucking guru or whatever the case may be. I've just taken all of those factors and applied them to what we're talking about to keep my people alive.
I love it.
And to be a guardian. And that's why our ethos, and it's splattered all across our website. What are you doing today to prepare for tomorrow?
I love it, man.
And it has nothing to do with Spartan helmets. Sorry. No Molon Labe. None of that. It's just being prepared.
I got to ask you something. The Guardian symbol that you got there on your chest and flying high behind you there, it kind of looks Air Force-y to me. Did you get some kind of inspiration there? Have you ever been told that before? I want to see if I can find something real quick.
So I've been told it looks like angel wings.
Kind of does, yeah.
Say it looks like the wings of a phoenix. Air Force. I chose blue because we are mostly a law enforcement owned and operated, company.
Sure.
But also, if you look at the American flag, and the actual meaning of blue is loyalty.
I want to share something up with you real quick. Give me a second. Okay. I want you to see this. So this is what I'm seeing. This, the U.S. Air Force wings there. You did not draw. You're telling me you drew no inspiration from this. I mean, it's almost like a twin to what you're rocking there.
I better not get sued by the Department of Defense.
It's pretty dope though. Look at this guy right there. It's like it's almost identical.
I wore that for 4 years.
Yeah.
So the symbolism behind it is the wings or the fingers or whatever you call it is you as a guardian. That you're a guardian. And so like if you go to our About Us page, the first thing you actually read well before you find out about how badass I am or our instructors is the actual Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of guardian.
Let's see if I can get that pulled up for everybody. We'll throw it up on the stream here.
Yeah.
Beep bop. Let me see if I can jump in here. I'm technology challenged. So,
you're doing pretty good.
There we go. Yeah, here we go. Well, besides this cookie policy, why the hell does Guardian want my cookies?
Well,
I'll accept it.
That's Google. That's Google now.
All right, About Us. Here we go. What do we got here? Guardian. Boom, look at that. One assigned to protect or oversee another, such as a person or a body of persons on sentinel duty. Very cool. A defensive state or attitude, a defensive position. The act or duty of protecting or defending. The state of being protected, to protect from danger, especially by watchful attention, make secure, police, guardian our cities. To stand at the entrance of as if on guard or as a barrier, to tend to carefully. Yeah, I mean, those are all very cool things.
Yeah, and so looking at the root of the words, as you all know, like I enjoy the use of force concepts. So for me, words have meaning, and that means a lot to me, that guardian mindset. And none of that, well, actually entirety, involves shooting people.
Right.
It's a guardian mindset. So like our logo, a lot of people, you see the logo, it's the wings or the fingers or the Air Force logo. The center is left blank. So that's you as a guardian. The blue part is you as a guardian, and the center's left blank because that's why you're becoming a guardian. And that could be your family, your friends, yourself, your community, your cat. Like my dog, like I've got a 60-pound pit bull at home, taken from the South Side Chicago. And the most dangerous part about him is his tail and his tongue. But if you ever attack that dog, you're going to have to deal with my wife. And so like my wife's reasoning in becoming a guardian is my dog, her dog, my kiddo, and then me.
Hey, it's the way it works, right?
That's the way it works.
No, I like it. I like the symbolism. It's, yeah, definitely. And then, a lot of people slap bunk symbolism on shit and then try to ride with it. But you guys actually put some meaning into this, and I could respect that. So, all right. So we covered it here. Be a good person. The best fight we could have is often the one we don't fight at all, and continue your training. Training is not a one-time event. It is a journey. And Josh, with that, man, I think that we've about rode this pony to death. As my buddy Henry says, we rode it like a rented mule. So with that, buddy, I appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find more about Josh Logan or Guardian?
Absolutely. So our website is www.gtctrain.org. That's our website. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Google, Yelp, and a myriad of other things. So if you just type in Guardian Training and Consulting on a Google search, you're going to find it everywhere. The Better Business Bureau, we just became A+ rated on the Pacific Southwest for the Better Business Bureau. So if you search on Better Business Bureau, they called us like 3 months ago, said, hey, we've been watching you, and we would like to accredit you as a Better Business Bureau A+ rated business.
Nice.
So you can pretty much find us anywhere. And then if you have questions, my email is the letter J at gtctrain.org.
Very cool. And guys, for you audio only guys, make sure you head over to YouTube and check out the channel there, Practical Training Professionals or PTPGun.com Firearms Instruction or Firearms Training. Either one of those will link you to the right place. And all of Josh's contact information and everything you need to know about him and Guardian Training and Consulting will be down in the show notes. You guys should be able to just click right through without a problem. If you're in Arizona, if you're up in the Sun Valley and you want to get some awesome training, look up Josh, look up Guardian out there. You're going to be impressed. And I will be taking you up on that offer. I'm going to come down there and get some training myself.
Yes, sir.
So with that, everybody, y'all have a good one. Learn, defend, and prevail. We're out here.
Thank you.